In the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, Kyle Rittenhouse himself was on the stand yesterday, and I think he'll be on a little bit today as well. And after the podcast, I went home and just watched, sort of riveted, and it flashed my mind back as I was listening to this kid talk to the way in which he was prejudicially described by a media that was out to create a narrative long before the trial, in a sense, so that a fair trial for Kyle would be impossible. Now, here's a short clip of the kind of rhetoric that we heard ad nauseum prior to the Rittenhouse trial. Listen.
Rittenhouse is basically what you would have had in a school shooter. He's a 17-year-old kid. He shouldn't have had a gun. He crossed state lines to supposedly protect property. No, he was going out to shoot people.
Kyle Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old vigilante.
Kyle Rittenhouse, the vigilante.
Kyle Rittenhouse, the armed teenage vigilante.
A 17-year-old vigilante, arguably a domestic terrorist, picked up a rifle, drove to a different state to shoot people.
Right about the same time, Joe Biden himself weighed in. He had a picture of Rittenhouse with a gun. He described him as a white supremacist. There's not a shred of evidence that Kyle Rittenhouse is a white supremacist of any kind. But why is the left so keen to convict Rittenhouse? Why is it such a big deal to them? You know why? It's because this trial isn't just about Rittenhouse. It's also about the left itself. It's about Antifa, and it shows a window into who these people are. Who is Antifa? What kind of person joins Antifa? Remember Biden himself, Antifa is just an idea. Well, no, Antifa's made up of real people, and the left wants to defend and protect those people. In fact, even make them into heroes. I saw, it was Joy Reid, we better remember the victims of Rittenhouse. And she read their names as though she was reading, the names of the soldiers who fell, at Normandy. Unbelievably, and in retrospect, virtually, comic, but also absolutely disgusting. Now, there's so much to say about the trial, so many memorable scenes. I mean, the one that sticks out of my mind is the prosecutor trying to get Rittenhouse for watching video games. He goes, well, isn't it the purpose of the video game that you try to kill everybody? And Rittenhouse goes, well, yes, but it is a video game. It's not real life. I mean, I gotta say, when I looked at those images of Rittenhouse with his inverted baseball cap and the t-shirt, I thought, this guy's a little bit, he's gonna be an easy target for a sly, manipulative prosecutor like Binger. But no, it turns out Rittenhouse is an excellent witness. He knows almost with a kind of preternatural instinct what to say. At one point, even in difficult questions, Binger said, well, isn't it true, Mr. Rittenhouse, that you had your gun pointed at Mr. Rosenbaum when you pulled the trigger? And Rittenhouse had to say, yes. And then he goes, well, doesn't it follow that you intended to kill him? Tough question. You have your gun pointed at someone, not just at their toe, but at their chest, and you pulled the trigger. Didn't you intend to kill him? And Rittenhouse says, no. And then the prosecutor goes, no, what do you mean no? You pointed your gun at his chest, you pulled the trigger, you intended to kill him. What else was on your mind? And Rittenhouse then said correctly, at least correctly for his own case, he said, no, I was just trying to stop him. I was just trying to prevent him from doing harm to me. So this kid was I can see now why the defense was not afraid to put him forward, because the prosecution, I think at the end of hours of cross-examination, was not able to land a single clean blow on this kid. Now, let me turn to the Antifa people. And by that I mean the so-called victims of this case. We're talking here about Joseph Rosenbaum. We're also talking about Anthony Huber, and we're talking about this guy, Gage, what's his last name? Grosskreutz, I guess it is. Yes. Now, these guys are not exactly nice guys. In the case of Joseph Rosenbaum, this is a convicted sex offender. This is a pedophile. This is a guy who has been convicted of inappropriate sexual activity with 5 boys ranging from 9 to 11 years old. How often have you heard about that in the media? The media has done a lot to sanitize, to bury the records of these guys. Anthony Hoover, a domestic abuser, someone who was who had drug paraphernalia in his possession. By the way, this is a guy who, armed with a butcher knife, told his brother that he would, quote, gut him like a pig. He threatened to burn down the family home. Now, how do I know all this? I know all this not from the trial. In fact, it came up in pre-trial. And the question was, should it be introduced in the trial? And the prosecution realized this is very damaging because it shows that these guys are, I mean, these are criminals and sickos and perverts. This is Antifa, by the way. These are the kind of disturbed individuals who join Antifa. And the judge decided to leave some of this out of the trial because it has no direct bearing on what happened. And I think that from a judicial point of view is a correct decision. But from the larger framework, from our political attempt to understand Antifa, this is so revealing. And what's even more insidious, it's not just that you've got some mental patients and some crackpots who show up, in a riot. It's that the left loves these guys. The left sees these guys as their foot soldiers. And this is why they do everything they can to clean up their records, to make them look good, as, Joy Reid, in a sense, performing the kind of sanctimonious function of almost memorializing them, almost like a clergyman delivering a eulogy. And so it's really what you see here is the dementia of the left. And I think what is troubling for them about Rittenhouse is that he's busting their narrative. Because now you have the left-wing cover-up, the media cover-up, the one-sided reporting, the presumptive judgments about Kyle Rittenhouse, he's this, he's that. And now people can see Rittenhouse, and they can see what he's really like. And what they see is a kind of bewildered, frightened, and maybe somewhat irresponsible kid, but one nevertheless who didn't do anything irresponsible that night and certainly doesn't need to be locked up for life for defending himself.